Welcome to today's NaNoJumo. I'm going to just quickly start off with a more live video, and I'm going to talk about this background, and then I'm going to speed it up and go through the whole art journal process with you. Today's prompt is butterflies from the CraftShack.com design team. We're kind of hopping on the bandwagon here and created a whole bunch of our own little prompts for this. So here's what I've started off with. So because my hope is that as I go through my journal, any pages that are empty, I'll be able, or unfinished, I'll be able to use this challenge to finish them. I'm hoping to have like all the consecutive pages in my journal finished all the way up to the end of the last Junker journal, done by the end of 2015, so that when I start 2016, everything is nice and fresh, and it's a fresh start in all ways, in my art, in my home, in all parts of my life. So I wanted to talk about this just for a moment. This was a piece of white tissue paper, and what I did with that tissue paper is on one side I took a background stamp and I stamped it with black StazOn ink till it was all this nice black beautiful crisp image, and I just stamped all over the white piece of tissue paper. Then once that was dry, I flipped it over and I sprayed the back of the tissue paper in a whole bunch of different colors. I spattered it with the red, I sprayed it with the pink, some of it is a shimmer spray, some of it is whatever. It's just a big huge mess of sprays. Then I took that piece of tissue paper and I laid it over a railing that was covered in a plastic tablecloth, and I allowed it to dry, all dry out. And my original intention for this paper was to use it for hair in one of my dolls. I'll just show you a quick demo of the type of doll I'm talking about. So here, this girl here, her hair would have been used, that kind of thing, with the tissue paper. It creates this differentiation, all these different tones, all these different colors, by cutting up the tissue paper and gluing that on. Now, that was that. And I had this left over from a class because I did a demo for the hair and I didn't end up using it. I ended up misplacing it and having to use something else, or I decided I didn't want to use the hair, or I had set it aside for another project. But either way, I ended up with this tissue paper. Now, what I wanted to do is I wanted to collage a scene on this tissue paper. So I glued it all on this page and I trimmed it all up and made it all fancy. And then I looked at it and I said, you know what? I really love this, the way that it went down so nice and smooth when I put it down with the matte gel, or matte medium, sorry. And so I instead made another page with the leftovers, and that's where I got this one. So I created the scene that I wanted on this page with this all written out. And you notice the background, there's not much of it showing, so it's kind of a patchwork now. I'm more happy with that. But this went on so nice and smooth that I wanted to keep it as a background, and I'm in love with it so much that I thought, oh well, I'll just leave it just like this and sign off my name, and then I'll never touch it again. But you know, as it grows on me, I think it needs a little bit of love, it needs a little bit of work, it needs to feel finished. For me, I need to make it so that it feels finished. So that is what I'm going to do now. Thanks for watching, and you'll see the rest of what happens to this fabulous page. So my next step in this process is to find a piece of fabric. Now, I don't go to fabric stores to find my fabric. What I do is I go to quilting or crafting shows where they have all the squares pre-cut. This a company that I get most of my squares from is called Moda, M-O-D-A, and I wait until they come to my local trade show or trade fair, and I go and buy all of my fabrics then, because they have everything out on display. It's all in coordinating bundles and packages, and I can buy it in a pre-cut 8x8 square. I can cut it in I can buy them in 6x6 squares and 2x2 squares. So I often use the 2x2 squares for my ATC cards, and I often use the 8x8s for my larger books, and then the 6x6 for my medium-sized books. And then I can also find, when you're at one of those quilting and fabric trade shows, you can also find all kinds of other fabrics that you would recognize. So the music notes that I just put down there, those are the Tim Holtz eclectic elements, and this is called the symphony fabric. So I just grab, some fat scraps and stuff from that, and off we go. I do not like to buy big huge chunks of fabric from the fabric store because I have to have it all, and it takes so long to get it all nice and trim and I only really need maybe 8 inches by 8 inches or a foot by a foot or something like that. It's not often that I need to have more than that. So I'm using black gesso for this. I was thinking about using black paint, I was thinking about using black ink, and I really wanted something that was going to be very, very opaque, very solid, and so I wanted it to be flat as well. I didn't want it to be glossy. So this black gesso works absolutely perfect, and then I'm showing you here that I'm just scrubbing it with a baby wipe. I did have to scrub it with about 3 baby wipes because of the size of the stamp, but that's how I clean them after. And I always make sure to clean my stamps right away because the paint can adhere to your stamp and then cause problems when you're doing inking stuff later. So then I grabbed these the big stamp was an old Inkadinkado stamp, and these little ones, I think they are the Flora and Fauna 2 set, I think, from W+9. And I just love these butterflies. I love how open they are, that I can actually see the pattern on there. And then I'm just going to use the brayer again and stamp that on. And the way that they stamped, I ended up getting some pretty fabulous butterflies where one of them has love on it, one of them has adore and sweet and hugs and kisses and all that. So I really love stamping with gesso onto fabric. And I've done this before too with darker fabric, stamping white onto it, and it turns out really nice clear crisp images. And the thing that makes them nice clean crisp images is that there's a little bit of give to the fabric, and if you let them sit on the fabric for a couple seconds, then it allows the fabric to absorb the paint into it, so you don't have to worry about not getting the full image. And then I just keep going. And this one I thought, I like this so much, I'm just going to put them all in a row, and if I want to use the fabric again later, I can. And that's what I did. I just kept stamping butterflies on these little squares from the quilting and scrapbooking trade fair. This one was here in Sherwood Park, Alberta, Canada, and we have the Canadian Scrapbooker magazine. They come and put on a big huge crop event in the middle of the trade hall. So wrapping around one side you have all of the quilting and fabric crafts, and a whole bunch of classrooms around the outside edge, and then in the back corner of the room you have all of the local scrapbooking companies with their booths, along with the center stage basically, which turns into a gigantic crafting space. And then you can pay the crafting fees, the crop fees, and you can stay there, leave all your stuff there all weekend long, and do cropping all weekend long, do scrapbooking or mixed media or whatever you like all weekend long. Now, most of the time, those events, that crop is themed, and this past year actually was kind of hilarious because it was themed for the 80s. So you had all these croppers and scrapbookers sitting around in neon clothing, having a ball, like absolutely having a grand old time, just doing all their paper crafts, dressed in these fancy funky colors and tutus and roller skates and all that kind of stuff. It was a sight to see, I have to say. This year I had the privilege of going to the trade show with a company that I've been teaching at. So in helping them to set things out and to man their booth for a couple hours, I was able to go to the show for free. And if you can go to those shows for free just by volunteering and helping other people out, that's really, really fabulous, because you get to see a lot of the different people, and you get to learn about a lot of the different questions that people are asking, and that gives you the opportunity to find out about the products even that little bit more. Some people will share with you what's coming next and so on. So all I did is cut all these butterflies out with my fabric scissors, Now, I'm one of those horrible people who use my fabric scissors for paper, so the first set didn't work very well. I had to switch over to a newer set of actual fabric scissors, and then it worked just fine. And so now I'm just kind of throwing them on, seeing how they'll fit, and then I thought I would add this measuring tape. It's an old measuring tape, and it's one of the ones where the ends are all kinked up and stuff like that. It is an actual plastic or vinyl measuring tape for clothing, and so I thought that this would work really well. And then I just put the matte gel on there. I'm using a heavy matte gel instead of a matte medium, and that's because I wanted the chunky glue kind of thing, and I like how solidly that glues all that down. And then I just smoothed out all the overflow, all the excess, and then I'm going to glue on my butterflies. Now, once again, we have one of those cases where I lay everything out how I want it, I don't take a picture, and then I just reorganize as I glue things down without really thinking about it. And so, you know, it works out really well. I always end up liking what I get at the end, so I think we're okay. So this big, huge green one, it goes on. And the green one, once you get closer in, you'll see that the pattern on there, it looks like stripes, but it's actually lines of X's and O's. And then this little butterfly I'm just putting on now, that is all kinds of love. It's the theme of the fabric is love. And then the other one is little flowers, or like those paisley kind of things, but that the colors match with the ones that are, say, love on them. And once again, I'm just putting everything on with the matte gel, or with the with the gel, and this is the golden that I'm using, golden matte heavy gel. So as I put all of these on, I'm remembering that I had forgotten some things. First of all, I had planned that I was going to put on the square of fabric, the blue, and then I was going to put on the line, the big strip of white fabric, and then I was going to go and do a whole bunch of stenciling with a gel or with a paste or something like that, just to give like the bright white on there for all that stuff and bring everything together, because I've got some off-white and some bright white, and so I wanted to make everything work. And then I realized, oh, I also wanted to put this silver shiny thread on here too, which is something that I've seen in Mixed Media Jen's ATCs. I'm watching a lot of those, her little index card videos, and she often coils up threads and yarns and stuff like that on her ATCs and shoves it underneath things and staples it in there. And I thought, oh, you know, this is drying, I'm just going to shove it under there real quick. So I hope that it stays. It might not, and I'll have to fix that later on. But so I couldn't go in and do the stenciling with the paste anymore, because my butterflies were just too committed to the page, and so I had to I just went through and added this silver thread in order to at least have some of my plans realized. Now, one of the problems that I was having is that everything is just disappearing into the different layers. You know, the blue is disappearing into the white, and all the light colored butterflies are disappearing into there as well. And so I needed to fix that, to modify that. And in order to do that, I decided I was going to try and distress the Tim Holtz fabric, which that seems fitting, right? Well, how was I supposed to do that? So I went to the thing that I always go to, which is my Stabilo pencil. I'm going to sharpen that down to a nib, I'm determined. And so I grabbed that and I go to town, kind of creating a border along the page. And now I wanted it to kind of have that inked up look like he does with his papers, Tim Holtz does with his papers, where it's kind of got a grade to it, and it you know, there's lots of black in some areas and very little in other areas. And so the way that I did this with my Stabilo is I added lots of water to create kind of a wicking effect along the edges of the fabric. And then because it's going to fade and the line work absorbed right into the fabric immediately, I didn't even get the chance to have it go any further than that. So I decide what I'm going to do is just, once I activate the stuff that I had drawn on with the crayon, with the actual pencil, I'm going to go through and just touch the tip of the Stabilo All pencil with the water brush, and then I'm going to add water that way. And then I'm just going to keep adding lots and lots of water and saturating it and allowing it to wick across the page so that it gives me that cloudy, distressed kind of look to that page. So as you watch this edge here is layers and layers of fabric, right? So it's not just going to wick in one direction, it's going to wick in both directions. And as you can see right now, it's leaking all to the left side of that. Now I thought, oh, this is going to be a mess, you know. How am I gonna manage that? So I just kind of keep going and waiting to see how that's going to move and how that's going to wick, and hopefully it doesn't look too bad when it's done. And I keep thinking about it, and finally I think, okay, well, I got to do something. And so when I'm adding this and I'm adding in the extra water to help it to move, it is moving. But if I were to add too much water, it would stop moving. It would only get to the point that it would continue to wick, and then it would stop. So I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to soak this. I'm going to soak it so bad that it washes it out so much in this area that there's not going to be a water line. Now I know that that looks awful, right, like that, because it's all soaking wet, but it worked out. Once the whole thing was dry, it didn't actually have any problems with wicking any black onto that side of the page, on that side of the fabric. So then I'm going to go along this side, and I was really quite terrified that the Stabilo All and the water would wick into those fabric butterflies. But it appears that the gel that I put underneath, that I glued them down with, was enough of a buffer to make it so that I wouldn't have any problems with that. So then I put an edge on here, just a little bit, just to give that, you know, this is the signal that this is the edge of the page. I activate it with my water brush, and it doesn't dry very dark. It does add, you know, that little extra bit of element to the page, but it doesn't dry too bad. And then I'm going to go through and go around this one butterfly that is kind of my focal point. I didn't go around all the butterflies, that wasn't what I was going for, but I wanted the big butterfly to have a little bit of a more prominence in this page, and so I went around that one. The next thing that I did is, looking at the page, I decided there's just too much white in it because I didn't get around to doing the paste. And so, or the modeling paste. And so what I did is I just went and grabbed my label maker. It's a pink scrapbooking label maker, and I tapped out these words, and they say, "Great things never came from comfort zones," and threw them on there too, and that kind of balanced the page, and everything worked out exactly as I wanted it to. Now if you can see, watch these pictures where, you know, it dries, everything's okay. It did, the texture of the fabrics did mess with my camera a little bit in how it reflected the light, but other pictures you can actually see the beautiful texture of the fabrics. So thanks for watching, and I hope if you like this video that you will leave a comment, hit like, and share. Don't forget to come back tomorrow to see what I create with birds.